You're probably aware that 3 of our RTAs, that is Registrar and Transfer Agents, are called qualified RTAs because they handle very, very large volumes of investor data and transactions. And they have certain additional requirements which they have to comply with over and above what regular RTAs have to comply with. So similarly over here, in order to address the concentration risk which exists in our market today, there are, as you know, for instance, the top 10 or top 12 brokers will account for very, very large percentage of the market volumes. So in order to mitigate the concentration risk, what is proposed is that on the basis of some very transparent criteria, first of all, certain brokers will be identified or designated as qualified stockbrokers, and there will be an enhanced requirement on them in terms of risk management, of course, all types of risk, market risk, IT risk, cyber risk, etc. Much higher standards will be expected of them. And there will be a higher obligation on the MIIs and on SEBI in terms of monitoring them as well. So for instance, in terms of our inspections, etc., frequency of inspection, regularity of review, etc., all of that, there will be a greater responsibility on the MIIs and on SEBI as well. The next item is relating to FPIs. As you know, we had a few months ago constituted a dedicated standing committee for FPIs to be able to focus on their requirements. They are an important stakeholder in our markets. And one of the first things that they wished us to take up was to have an easier onboarding process and a registration process. And based on the recommendations of the working group that was constituted under the aegis of that committee, a number of recommendations have come, including processing of papers based on scanned copies, digital signatures, SWIFT mechanism to get confirmations from overseas bankers, and so on. Certain risk mitigation measures are also in place, so it's not as though only scanned copies will be used. The plan is really because they need a number of registrations and accounts to be opened. So what happens is that it all becomes sequential and everything has to wait for the next thing. Whereas the plan here is that once you are relying on scanned documents, you can do a lot of things in parallel. But the final activation of the accounts will only happen when the physical documents come. But still, in the meanwhile, you've been able to do many more things in parallel. So this is expected to bring down the time required for FPI registration and also to facilitate making it more easy. The next one is in respect of green bonds. As you know, this is going to become a very key area of finance for all countries. And it is very important that we facilitate finance of green initiatives while safeguarding against greenwashing. So what we have done in this regulation is to facilitate 3 or 4 things. Number one is to actually enhance the scope as compared to our earlier regulations, enhance the scope in terms of the definition of green debt, and bring in new proposals, for instance, in terms of pollution prevention, pollution control, eco-efficient products, etc. We've also introduced the concept of blue bonds, which relates to water management and the marine sector. And as you know, going forward, a lot of carbon credits can be generated not just from the forests in the country, but from the marine resources that the country has. So this will become very important once we move into the carbon credit area. Also, yellow bonds related to solar energy and transition bonds or transition finance bonds, which, as you know, are forms of finance which are targeted at helping companies which are in an area of high carbon impact and assisting them to transition to low carbon impact. So each of these areas is very important to us, but at the same time, we also needed to address certain greenwashing related risks. And this is something that also we are proposing in the regulation. As always, a glide path approach is being adopted. and time is being given to existing issuers because they are already there, they've already raised money, in order to have a smooth transition to this regime.